All right, everyone, let's dive in. Today, we're going to be exploring PowerCLI and YAML.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and we're going to be looking at a blog post from Dale Hassinger,
Okay.
who is a VMware community code coach. Pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. So by the end of this, we really want to make sure that you're comfortable with kind of how these two things, PowerCLI and YAML, can really work together to streamline a lot of different automation tasks.
Yeah, I think what's great about Hassinger's approach right off the bat is how he emphasizes keeping things simple, you know?
Yeah.
It's something that sometimes gets lost in the complexity of automation, you know? You get in the weeds.
It can definitely get very complicated.
Yeah.
And so this core idea he has is actually really brilliant in its simplicity.
Yeah.
He basically says to store all of your home lab variables
Okay.
in one YAML file.
All right.
And, some folks might be hearing that and thinking, wait, YAML, what's that?
Right.
So for those who maybe haven't encountered it before, YAML is basically a way to write data that's both easy for humans to read and for computers to read,
Okay.
which is why it's often used for configuration files.
Got it.
So, I mean, it's like having this central control panel for your entire home lab.
That's a great analogy.
Right. And it's neatly organized thanks to YAML.
I like that.
So let's kind of unpack what Hassinger is saying here.
Yeah.
What are some of the big wins he's highlighting with this approach of a single YAML file for all your variables?
So he really hits on a few key points that I think really resonate with, the idea of making automation efficient, right?
Mm.
And so one of the things he mentions is that managing and updating your variables becomes much, much easier.
Okay.
Because everything's in one place,
Right.
You're not digging through tons of different scripts trying to find where you set a particular value.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So centralization's a big win.
And the fact that it's human readable, right? Like YAML, it's not some crazy code.
Oh, that's huge.
It's actually meant for people to look at and understand.
Yeah.
And that's got to cut down on errors.
Right, yeah, for sure. I mean, anyone who's tried to do automation before knows that,
Right.
A single typo can just, throw everything off.
Oh, yeah. Been there.
And then also, if you're working with a team, YAML makes collaboration so much smoother.
Right.
Everyone can easily understand the configuration.
Because you're not trying to decipher someone else's,
Exactly.
crazy scripting style.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about it being easier to manage, less prone to errors, great for collaboration.
Yeah.
But if we kind of zoom out a bit, to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
this approach actually aligns really well with this whole philosophy of infrastructure as code.
Absolutely.
Right? So your configuration files, they actually become like living documents.
Right.
They're managed, they're version controlled,
Yeah.
just like any other software project, which is really cool.
And that's a really important concept in modern IT,
Yeah, for sure.
Treating your infrastructure configuration just like you treat your code.
And speaking of consistency, that's something else that Hassinger's a big fan of, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
He uses YAML across his tools and scripts.
Yeah.
And that creates this really nice kind of consistent flow.
Yeah.
And to make all this YAML magic happen within PowerShell, he uses the PowerShell YAML module.
Oh, okay.
So, for folks who might not be familiar, basically this module is like, it acts as a bridge between PowerShell and YAML.
Gotcha.
So it allows PowerShell to easily read and understand and work with the data that's stored in these YAML files.
So it's kind of like a translator almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Taking the YAML and making it understandable to PowerShell.
Yeah, perfect analogy.
Okay.
So let's actually take a look at this YAML file that Hassinger uses. It's like a blueprint for his home lab. And it has variables for all sorts of things: nested ESXi hosts, vCenter settings, you name it.
So it's comprehensive, covers a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he doesn't just dump all this information in there randomly,
No.
He actually structures it very thoughtfully.
Okay.
Using categories like NH for nested hosts, vCenter for
right.
vCenter settings, so it's very organized.
Like labeled drawers, so you can find everything you need.
Exactly.
I love a good organizational system.
Me too. Makes things so much easier.
For sure.
And that structure, I mean, that's not just for neatness, right?
No, not at all.
It's actually crucial because it makes it easy for PowerShell scripts to find the specific variables they need.
Right. So you can think of the YAML file like a library, right?
Okay.
That's well organized. And the PowerShell scripts are like the researchers coming in, knowing exactly where to find the information they're looking for.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So we've got these categories, but how does the information actually look within them?
So he uses a really clear format. It's key value pairs.
Okay.
So for example, under the NH category, you might have, vCenter server addresses, and then the actual address, username, the
Yeah.
username
Okay.
password, the password.
So it's like a really well-formatted spreadsheet. You can just
Exactly.
instantly see what each value represents.
Yeah, exactly. Easy to understand.
And he also uses lists in some sections.
Right.
So for instance, under NNH, there's this hosts section
Okay.
that actually lists out each ESXi host
Right.
with its host name, IP address, and whether it should be created by the script.
So it's not just about individual settings.
Right.
It's about managing groups of related things as well.
Yeah, very clever.
Yeah, it's a great way to handle those situations where you've got multiple similar components
Yeah.
in your environment.
You keep mentioning NH, and that's just one section of his YAML file, right?
Right.
That's right, yeah.
There's more to it.
Yeah, remember how we said it's like a blueprint for his whole lab?
Right.
So he actually has 4 distinct functional areas in this YAML file.
Okay, let's break those down. What are we looking at here?
So you've got NH for that nested ESS environment.
Okay.
You've got vCenter, those connection details for vCenter.
Got it.
Host 101, which has the credentials for a specific ESS host.
Okay.
And then OPS, which defines how to log in to his VCF operations appliance.
Wow, so each section is like its own little configuration area.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
very modular. It's almost like building with Lego blocks.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got these different pieces that you can put together.
And that modularity, that has huge benefits.
Yeah.
It makes it so much easier to understand the YAML file, to troubleshoot it,
Right.
to modify it. You
Mm.
can focus on one specific area
Yeah.
without getting lost in a sea of other details.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got this beautifully structured YAML file. It's like the blueprint for his automation dreams. But what happens next?
Right.
How does he actually put this thing to work?
That's a great question, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where the PowerCLI scripts come in.
Okay.
Yeah. They're kind of like the chefs, they
Yeah.
take the ingredients from the YAML file and they cook up some automation magic.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So walk me through it. How do these PowerCLI scripts actually work?
Okay, so the first thing they do is make sure that all the required PowerShell modules are installed on your system.
Okay.
Like checking if you've got all the tools you need before you start cooking.
Right. You got to have the right ingredients.
Exactly. And then they read that YAML file and they transform it into a PowerShell object.
Okay.
It's kind of like translating that blueprint into a language that PowerShell can understand.
So the YAML file is like the raw data,
Yeah.
and the PowerShell object makes that data usable within the scripts.
Exactly.
Okay.
And once that YAML data is in a PowerShell-friendly format, the scripts can actually access specific values
Okay.
within that object to do whatever task they need to do.
So it's all about kind of efficiency and flexibility, right?
Absolutely.
Like if you need to change something, you just update the YAML file. You don't have to mess around with the scripts themselves.
Yeah, you don't have to go into each individual script and tweak a bunch of values.
Right.
It's a huge time saver, especially when you're dealing with more complex automation workflows.
For sure.
And it makes your scripts way more adaptable, right? If you want to run them in a different environment, just change the YAML file.
Exactly. Plug and play.
Exactly.
Now, Hassinger have a few different example scripts, right?
He does, yeah.
Like, he doesn't just talk about the concept, he actually shows how it works in practice.
Yeah, he provides some concrete examples, and one that I think really highlights the power of this approach is
Okay.
the script for creating nested ESX EVMs.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about this one. I've been curious about that.
Yep. So this script, it pulls all the necessary details from the YAML file. Things
Okay.
like the host name, the IP address, networking configuration.
Yeah.
And it uses all that information to build and configure virtual machines
Okay.
with the exact specifications that Hassinger needs.
So instead of having to manually configure each VM
Right.
or like hard code all those settings into the script,
Exactly.
you can just change a few lines in the YAML file and boom, the script takes care of the rest.
Right. And imagine how much time that saves,
Yeah.
Especially if you're creating multiple virtual machines with similar settings.
It's like having this virtual machine factory that just runs on autopilot.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's very efficient.
What other scripts does he have?
So he also includes scripts for connecting to vCenter,
Okay.
connecting to a specific ESXi host,
Yeah.
and even connecting to his VCF operations appliance.
So he's really demonstrating how versatile this approach can be.
Yeah, absolutely. He's showing that it's not just limited to creating virtual
Right.
machines. It can be used for a wide range of automation tasks.
And the cool thing is, like, all these scripts, they follow the same underlying principle.
Right.
Load variables from the YAML file, use those variables to drive the actions of the script.
Exactly. It's a very consistent
It's
approach.
like a universal adapter for automation.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
So Hassinger, he also talks about some of the lessons he learned, right,
He does,
as
yeah.
he was developing these scripts.
Yeah, he shares some really valuable insights.
Our listeners, they love a good lessons learned moment.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So what did he find particularly valuable about this approach?
I think one of the things he highlights is just the joy of finding consistency, you know?
Okay.
He talks about how much he enjoys using the same YAML-driven approach across all his scripts.
Yeah, I get that there's something really satisfying
Yeah.
about having that consistency. It makes things so much easier to manage.
Absolutely. And he even points out that this whole approach actually mirrors a lot of the workflows that he sees in professional automation platforms.
Interesting. So it's not just a Harm Lab hack.
Exactly.
It's something that actually scales to enterprise level automation.
Absolutely. And that's a really important point for, anyone who's listening who's thinking about, maybe getting into automation as a career.
Yeah, for sure.
These are valuable skills to have.
You're learning stuff that's actually applicable in the real world.
Absolutely.
There's another interesting detail he mentions. He developed and tested all these scripts on a Mac,
Oh, wow. Okay.
which kind of surprised me.
Yeah, you don't usually think of PowerCLI and Mac going together.
Right, like in my mind, PowerCLI is very much a Windows tool.
Yeah, it is, but PowerShell itself is actually cross-platform.
Oh, interesting.
So it can run on different operating systems, including macOS and Linux.
So you could potentially leverage the power of PowerShell and YAML
Absolutely.
regardless of what system you're using.
Yeah, you're not limited to Windows.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it opens up a lot of possibilities.
So Hassinger's basically saying, hey, don't be afraid to jump into PowerShell, even if you're not a Windows expert.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a powerful tool, and YAML just makes it even more powerful.
For sure. So this has been really eye-opening. I mean, Hassinger really breaks down how powerful this YAML and PowerCLI combo can be.
Yeah, it's a great approach.
But I think what's most exciting is that this isn't just for, like, hardcore VMware pros, right?
No, not at all. That's the beauty of it,
Yeah.
Whether you're tinkering in your home lab
Right.
or you're managing a complex enterprise environment, the core principles are the same.
So for our listeners who might be hearing this and thinking, okay, this sounds amazing, but where do I even begin?
All right.
What would you say is a good starting point?
I'd say start small,
Yeah.
Think about those tasks that you find yourself doing repeatedly
Yeah.
that make you think, there's got to be a better way.
Right.
Maybe it's provisioning virtual machines, running updates, or even just gathering system information.
Okay.
Those are perfect candidates for automation.
And once you've got a task in mind, like what's the next step?
So then think about the information that's involved, right?
Okay.
What are the variables?
Yeah.
What needs to change each time you perform that task?
Gotcha.
That's what you're going to put into your YAML file.
Okay. So give me an example.
Okay, let's say you're always creating virtual machines with the same basic configuration.
Right.
You could store things like the operating system, the disk size, memory allocation, network settings, all that in your YAML file.
Okay.
And then your PowerCLI script could read that YAML file, grab those values,
Yeah.
and use them to automatically create the virtual machine for you.
So no more clicking through wizards
Or
or typing in the same information over and over again.
Exactly, it just does it for you.
That's awesome.
And the best part is, if you need to create a virtual machine with slightly different specs, you just update your YAML file, and the script takes care of the rest.
Like it's all about working smarter, not harder.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into PowerCLI and YAML, what's the one key takeaway that you hope our listeners walk away with?
I'd say it's don't be intimidated by automation.
Okay.
It's not just for experts. With tools like PowerCLI and YAML and a little bit of creativity, you can automate almost any task, big or small.
And you don't have to become a scripting guru overnight, right?
Absolutely not.
Like start with a small project.
Yeah.
Get comfortable with the basics.
Start small and build from there.
And gradually build your skills.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think that's really important advice.
Yeah, and the satisfaction of seeing your first automated task run flawlessly
Oh, yeah.
is incredibly rewarding.
For sure.
It's a great feeling to know that you've you've taken control of your workflow and you've freed up your time for other things.
Absolutely. So to our listeners, we challenge you, what can you automate? Take that first step, and you might just discover a whole new passion for the world of automation.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, happy automating.